I love you. Ladies and gentlemen, Green and Faceless on the couch are proud to present Genre Smackdown.
Yeah, that's the loudest I was able to get. I'm in an apartment complex. I have to monitor my volume.
Genre Smackdown. Happy Halloween, folks.
Happy Halloween. I'm the
Here
Green
we
Traveler.
are. And I'm the Faceless Leon. This is a podcast about movies. There will be spoilers ahead this episode, but we'll let you know when that happens. And we might sneak in some world events there. I mean, elections coming up, but that's not our focus. We're here to talk about some spoopy movies. And they're real spoopy, these ones.
Oh, yes.
Honestly, I think that out of all the movies, these two probably, that we've talked about, that is, not all of the movies in the world, but out of the movies that we've talked about, these two scare me the most. I will say that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they're both body horror movies. And
yes,
that does get me.
This is our first ever genre Smackdown, where Blake and I, we decide on a genre, and maybe later on in the future, you couch potatoes can decide on the genre.
Oh, that'd be fun,
we'll put forth a movie each. But for Halloween, for our first holiday special, we wanted to put forth a genre Smackdown of body horror. It didn't really start out as body horror; it was just horror, but it became body horror.
Yeah, it was just both the movies we put forth were of that particular subgenre.
Yeah, Blake put forth Hellraiser, and I put forth Videodrome.
Both fine flicks.
Originally I put forth Exorcist, but I figured I'd rather talk about that one by itself someday. Yeah. There's a lot in that one.
Hell yeah.
And then my backup was Videodrome, and thus body horror, not my favorite of horror genres.
Yeah.
But I will say up front that I believe these are two movies that do it right.
Definitely. It doesn't I was gonna say I wouldn't call it necessarily gore porn. I still want it, but Videodrome is rather pornographic. But that's kind of its point.
Pornographic, and Hellraiser is sadomasochistic.
yes. They're both got that going for them.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
I mean, honestly, this is the movie that I would say both of these movies, if you're gonna find it within yourself a sexual awakening, these movies might do it for you. You might find a new thrill in life with these two movies.
Just maybe. I've said it a couple of times, and typically Greenie over there disagrees with me. You shouldn't watch this with your kids.
Not yet, definitely. On this one, I would say you probably should not watch this with your kids.
Yeah, don't watch these.
There's legitimate scarring moments in these movies for kids.
Definitely. Oh man.
But I mean, if you want to get them excited early, I mean.
Yeah. I mean,
if that's
it
what you're
all
into.
Depends on how you want to educate your children.
I'm gonna edit that out.
Sure. So I think I'll just jump right in and tell you guys what Hellraiser's about. So Hellraiser, there is no monster called the Hellraiser. I'll just put that up in front. But anyways,
but hell is being raised, I would
say. Hell is being raised. So the kid's name is Christy. She's not important till later. Okay. So anyways, Larry and Julia, they're going to move into this house. That was his childhood home. And his brother, Frank, had already been there. Probably just
squatting in there.
Just kind of squatting there, yeah. and
He left it gross too.
Left it pretty nasty.
Terribly gross.
Some food and shit all over the place, and some
Maggots.
moldy rooms. Yeah.
No, it was the kind of mess
good.
that, like, if I had just bought that house, I'd walk in there and be like, you know what? We're gonna sell this back.
Yeah,
We can get another
we're gonna
house.
sell it, and somebody will flip it, and it'll be fine, and maybe we'll come back and see it. Anywho, Julia starts getting this strange attraction for one room, and then Frank comes back into the picture, I'll say. But he's not quite Frank anymore.
Yeah,
he's still very much Frank, but he's not.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard.
Spoiler free. It's Frank, but it's a different type. It's a different form of Frank.
It's a different form of Frank. Frank comes and
physical form.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't think it's too spoily to say that Julia's always had a thing for Frank. And she starts siding with Frank and helping Frank out. And Christy, for some reason, Larry's daughter,
bringing Frank back to his proper form. And that's what she's helping him out. She's trying to get him from his incomplete form to his final form.
That's right. That's right.
In anime terms.
Yeah. And Christy, who is Larry's daughter from another marriage, doesn't have a great relationship with Julia. She gets this eerie feeling that her daddy's in trouble and tries to stop, and that's how she gets involved. And that's kind of daddy. Yeah. that's part of the movie for sure. So anyways, I guess that's kind of the synopsis with, I mean, we can talk about spoilers later for sure.
Yeah, we'll get there. It's a little different this time with the genre Smackdown. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to put forth the plot synopsis for Videodrome. And then we'll talk both of these movies kind of concurrently, at the same time. Concurrently, not the right word.
Just kind of smack them together.
Yeah, just slap it. So Videodrome, stars James Woods. I love the man. He's an executive producer for smut television. He seeks out and finds just TV that's gonna gross you out, or it's for the fetish people out there. It's a very niche market that he feeds. And he comes across through pirate video. He comes across Videodrome, a very violent. It's a lot of torture and a lot of sexualized torture.
Yeah, it is hard to watch, unless you're super into that.
And James Woods' character, what's his name?
His name is Max Wren.
That's right. I wrote it down. I can't find it, though. Max Wren.
President of Channel 83.
Yeah. There you go. He becomes obsessed with Videodrome, like, wildly. And this one girl that he starts a romance with also becomes obsessed with it while watching it with him. To the point where she actually goes, like, she seeks out a job opportunity to travel out there and try to make it on Videodrome, to be not a contestant, but a participant in that crazy fetish fest. And Max Wren becomes kind of obsessed on getting out there himself, to kind of find her or get involved himself. Who knows really what's going on in his mind at sometimes in this movie.
Yeah, I think at first, like, he wants it for his channel, and then later he's like, he just has to know what it is.
Exactly. Or like what it's like.
Intrigued. Or what it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, body horror typically involves a mutation or some kind of torture of sorts. So I think it's okay to say that Max Friend starts to mutate a little bit into, I won't say what into, but he just starts to mutate. And
I think it's fair to say the new flesh. The new flesh is fair to say.
We'll say the new flesh.
Yeah.
But yeah, he starts to mutate, and now it becomes a matter of, can he stop the mutation? Can he, or does he want to stop it even? You know, it boils down to a lot of things, and we'll spoil stuff later, but that's, you know, things starting to get threatened of his normal life. I mean, even reality starts to get threatened in his normal life. So that's kind of the synopsis for Videodrome, is just a descent into wild
madness.
Body horror madness. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And,
I would say that it definitely has a similar feel of In the Mouth of Madness, where you just aren't sure what's real after a certain point.
Yes.
And it's I particularly like this movie. It's a good one.
Agreed. I like both movies. We won't pit our opinions on them until we're into the spoiler territory. But opinions against each other, I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think both movies do a great job at keeping you entertained throughout what's going on visually.
Right.
I've seen, you know, plenty of movies like this, so it's not shocking to me, and I can sit through it.
It's kind of like watching a train wreck. Like you can't turn away, but it's horrifying. Like you don't necessarily want to watch it. Oh man, I can't wait to start talking about spoilers. So I don't know. Should we say kind of just like generally how, like, our recommendations for these films real quick?
You know, I mean, I think it's fair to say that we would both recommend these movies. But I think there's some stuff before we get into spoilers. You know, I think there's some fun fact information, you know, behind the scenes stuff to get that out of the way up front.
Let's do that.
You know, both movies have a powerhouse behind them. There's Clive Barker with Hellraiser, and then for Videodrome, there's David Cronenberg, who is probably the king of body horror.
Right. He of the Fly.
You know, if you're gonna, the pioneer. You know, if you're gonna talk body horror, you will definitely have to talk Cronenberg, because he is a verb.
Right.
You know, Rick and Morty has made him a verb.
Yes. Yeah. They Cronenberged everyone.
But with I think it's, you know, best to start with Clive Barker, because I have more of a relationship with him, because as a Stephen King fan, once upon a time Stephen King called Clive Barker the future of horror. So as a fan of Stephen King, when I love that author so much, when he says that, I had to start reading this guy.
Right.
And the Books of Blood, which Clive Barker also made a movie that I don't think is that good. But he wrote the Books of Blood, a volume of short stories, and they're amazing. They're so, they're so different than what I've been used to, because he's a very sexualized horror author. There's a lot of horror built around sex, and quite often it's, in the middle of an act, a terrifying thing happens, and it's amazing, because like as a kid when I was reading it, obviously I hadn't been I wasn't very used to a lot of like sexual romanticized scenes like this. So as a kid, it was also kind of frightening, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is, I'm going to get caught reading this. I'm going to get in trouble. Then as I'm reading
a real horror behind
I know, yeah. But as I'm reading it, because I'm intrigued, I'm a kid going through puberty, and it's exciting for me to read this stuff. But as I'm reading it, then immediately something terrifying happens to the person that's having sex, and I'm just like, it shook me as a kid.
Is this what sex is like?
right. It's like, oh no. But that's another thing with Clive Barker that as a kid I wasn't used to, is he's very openly homosexual, and a lot of his books have homosexual or trans characters in them. And, not many authors, have characters like that. So this was the first kind of experience of, main characters who were not just straight men going through a horror story, which is typically, a lot of books, it's a straight man or a straight woman trying to fight something. And, Clive Barker was the first that introduced, this whole new kind of character to me. And back as, when I was a kid, I was against it. Not against them.
Sure. It's just, we were all raised in the 90s.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't relate to the characters that well. And, I wasn't really attached to a lot of his stories for a while. And even like as you go along with his books, he becomes more fantasy with his like later novels, and I started to kind of just lose touch with his writing style. I feel like if I were to go back now, I would enjoy it a lot more because it's more dry, slower paced, and I feel like nowadays that's kind of up my alley.
Sure.
Yeah, as a kid, Clive Barker, I had to kind of like put him down after Books of Blood, and I think whatever this Hellraiser is based off of, I think it's In the Flesh.
Did he write...
No, it's based off the Hellbound Heart. Hellbound Heart. That's the one I read.
Okay. Yeah, and the second one is called Hellbound. But I've never actually... This is the only one I've ever seen. Out of the
I feel like
Hellraiser
we can make a
series.
playlist out of... Yeah, we can make a playlist out of Hellraiser. Along with all the other horror franchises, of course.
Right. I think maybe we'll start... Well, we do have... I feel like we could do a franchise episode every year, potentially, as well, and make that...
Yeah, we definitely could. I feel like I'd like to get through them a little faster, too, though.
That's fair.
There's
we
12,
don't have to just
12 like
do
Friday the
horror
13th
for
movies.
Halloween. There's 12.
That's
How
true.
many of which one?
I think of Friday the 13th or some. I mean, there's 10 Hellraiser films, and then I think of Friday the 13th, there's like 12. Yeah, there's a lot.
Jeez. Well, I assume that they go a little deeper into the background. I don't know, villains. They're not really villains in this. They're not really villains in this. Yeah, the Cenobites or Cenobites, whatever they are, Cenoboids. I can't remember. Anyways, it's where the classic picture that everybody knows of Pinhead.
Pinhead.
Yeah, it's where he comes from. He's a part of a group of people from some other dimension, which I guess we can get more into later.
Yeah, played famously by Doug Bradley. Just as England is famous for Nightmare on Elm Street, Robert Englund, you know, Doug Bradley is Pinhead. You know, that's the guy.
Right.
And he's great. You know, him. I mean, all the Cenobites are great too, but you know,
yeah, he's
Pinhead
the one you remember. And I think what's kind of important to note about this first movie is that they're not a huge part of the movie. Like they're very much a consequence of what's going on.
Fun facts, real quick, about Clive Barker that I wanted to throw out there is that this is a man who understands death and pain really well. I mean, one, you're homosexual. You know, there's a lot of backlash still in society for that.
Right.
So like, he has that experience.
The AIDS pandemic.
Yes, definitely.
He was definitely working a lot during that period.
Yeah, and he struggled to get his start as an author. When he was first writing books, he was actually also working as a prostitute to make money. Wow. So it's, you know, he's one of those that's like he struggled. I mean, I wouldn't know if he called it struggling. I don't know his personal view on it. But, you know, it took a while to get his novels published. But once he did, you know, one of his first novels is being called by the king of horror. You know, it's like, this guy's the future. Yeah. And going off that, like, later in life, a scary story, one thing that makes me frightened of dentists is I read a couple years ago that Clive Barker went to the dentist And it's apparently a common thing that can happen, that when they're working in your mouth, they can release a lot of chemicals into your body. And he went into a, let me find it real quick. There was a spillage of poisonous bacteria that flooded his bloodstream and sent him into a coma for days. And he almost died from toxic shock syndrome.
Oh my God. From like something that was
Just
in his
from-
tooth?
Yeah, I guess just from cleaning his teeth, released. I mean, he was also a heavy smoker, so maybe it's just, a lot of nicotine and
Maybe, I don't
chemicals there, I'm sure. But yeah, apparently it's just a common thing, and it just terrified me when I read that, because it's like, one, I really liked this author, and then so I was like, oh no, is he gonna die? Because this was pretty recent. Like, it was I think it was 2011 or 2012. So 8 years ago, but felt recent.
Man, I'm really overdue for the dentist, and that just does not make me want to go.
Just floss, man. Make sure you floss.
Just make sure you floss. Make sure you get those pools of bacteria out of there. This is Green and Faceless PSA.
Yeah. And I haven't read any of his books since that event. So it's like, I can't tell you if it's inspired his writing style at all. But even before that, I got the feeling when I was reading his books that he understands pain, and he understands that fear and also kind of pleasure of pain and death, because there is a very, your brain has pain and pleasure like right next to each other.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for why a lot of people it's a fetish.
Right.
But even when you get hurt, there is that bit of pleasure in it at the same time. I don't know.
Right.
Because it's like earlier this week, I had something like catch underneath my thumbnail and tore through the skin, and it hurt like crazy. But at the same time, there's also like a little bit of like, ooh, that was like a very unique feeling that, it caused a little bit of pleasure.
Yeah, you don't get to
caused
feel that
mostly
all the time.
pain. Yeah, I would say it was 90% pain and, a tiny 10% of like, yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, so people are kind of probably hearing like my gasps and ahs on my side, and like this is how I am while watching these movies. So that's why these movies actually get to me, is because of it's just, you can imagine it happening to you.
Yeah.
And so what I was going to say is very tame by comparison. I was going to say I like to get deep tissue massages. I just let them beat the shit out of me. And but it feels so fucking good. And afterwards, your muscles are so loose. But
yeah, that is a different type of
it's a little bit different
pleasure. Yeah. This is like, these movies are like legit. There's we'll get into the spoilers, but there's like chains going into people with this.
Oh yeah.
But before we get into the spoilers, I should talk David Cronenberg a little bit. If we talked Clive Barker, we should talk David Cronenberg. Again, he's the master of body horror for a reason. He did Scanners. That's one of his first big movie. That's the movie. I don't know if you've seen Scanners, but it's the movie with the head explosion that is so like over the top and detailed and so beautiful. Do you remember we watched Deep Red?
Yeah, we watched
with
Deep Red,
yeah. There was that psychokinetic lady at the beginning, or not psychokinetic, but she could tell the future kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
Do you remember her?
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene at the beginning inspired Cronenberg's Scanners like head explosion scene, where it's like somebody's feeding you information telepathically, and it just overloads your brain to the point where it explodes.
Oh my god! I don't think we have.
Yeah,
watched
it's.
that one. We watched a couple other Cronenbergs.
Yeah, but you've probably seen the GIF of the head explosion. I bet if you were to see it now, you'd be like, oh, okay, yep, I've definitely seen that before.
Yeah.
But that's David Cronenberg, just absolute. genius when it comes to this stuff, and at the same time, like, I feel like he's a very level-headed individual. Great director. You know, he knows how to capture all this and be almost tasteful still. You know, it's like it's
almost
kind of
tasteful.
Almost tasteful. It's a little egregious, but at the same time, you know, you watch it and they never seem to like go way beyond the line.
Right.
He knows how to tell the story and keep you in.
I kind of imagine him as the Max Wren character, but like in the first half of the film, before things really start turning weird.
Well, funny you say that, because when things start turning weird is about when he puts a helmet on his head.
Yeah.
And James Woods would not put the helmet on his head, so David Cronenberg actually stepped in and was James Woods for.
That's really funny.
So where you say the movie turns away from David Cronenberg being Max Wren is when David Cronenberg literally became Max Wren.
That's so weird. Why is James Wood a little claustrophobic, or was he afraid?
He was afraid it would electrocute him. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was some wiring and stuff involved.
But to continue with Cronenberg, you know, he's a pioneer. He's for me, personally, you know, spoiler for me if you might not like to hear this, but I'm an atheist. And Cronenberg is a very prominent atheist. You know, his opinions go deeper than that. There's a lot to it, and I really like reading interviews where he discusses his atheism, and I would recommend people going out to look at that. I won't further talk about beliefs there, but you know, I feel like his atheism helps his characters a lot. Because they've their own cultural like backgrounds and beliefs, and Cronenberg typically will research that, and he'll give them, you know, he doesn't just blindly focus on something specific to him. Being an atheist, he's interested in other like cultures and ideas, and goes out and explores those through body horror. So, you know, not always the most grasping of entertainment for people to watch, but you know, if you go into them, you do learn probably more than what you would expect to learn.
Yeah, I would argue that it is grasping. It's just you don't necessarily want to be grasped by it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that is the thing with Videodrome, is like I feel like you go in expecting something and you're like, okay, why am I still in my seat? I should fucking leave.
Yeah, I should have left a while ago. Yeah, then you're just
glued after that, and just like, oh my god. But yeah, I feel there's not really much to Cronenberg's life. He was supposed to direct Return of the Jedi, but he didn't like the idea of directing somebody else's work, so he turned it down for this movie to make Videodrome. So it's like after the success of Scanners, you know, they sought him out because of his practical effect work, I guess.
Right. That makes sense.
But yeah, I think that's just super entertaining what we could have gotten.
Well, yeah. A Cronenberg Star
I think
Wars
it would have made it so much better.
Weird.
It would have been so great, I think.
Man, the Sarlacc pit. That would have been something.
I feel like also if he had done Return of the Jedi, we wouldn't have gotten the drivel we've gotten since.
Yeah, you think so? They would have.
I feel like the prequel. Yeah, I feel like the prequel trilogy probably wouldn't have, because I feel like it would have been darker.
That would have been nice.
You know, Return of the Jedi is very, very like warm-hearted for me. Like at the end, it's just like, all right, yay, it's done.
Well, yeah, you know, if
and it's
it was
nice,
only
but at the same time, it sets
movies, if it was only going to be 3 movies, a light ending is okay. But
yeah, but George Lucas had 12 planned. Yeah, he had to keep going and ruin it all, and then Disney took over, and you know, I don't mind the new trilogy, but Disney definitely Disneyfied it.
Yeah, Disney definitely put their hands on it. There's definitely Mickey's fingerprints all over it, but that's okay.
Yep.
We're not talking about that movie. We're not talking about those movies, but someday I'm sure we will.
Oh yeah, we will. We'll get there. But that's really all I had to say about the two main heads behind it. So I think here we can dive into spoilers.
All right, let's put up that wall, I guess, if we're gonna put up
Build that wall.
Hello, spoiler avoiders. Go to hour 1 minute 31. We drop the wall there. So welcome to Spoiler Town, ladies and gentlemen. And
we're the mayors.
Quick aside, if the first act of this episode feels herky jerky, we're filming at the end of a long day. I feel like both of us are probably a little tired. So.
Oh yeah, I had the in-laws over.
Yeah, you're very tired. I just read a lot of books and sat on a couch all day.
Well,
I took a
that'll
nap.
do it to you too. I mean, we had a good time. I'm not gonna dog on the in-laws. They're great.
Yeah.
Well, we went hiking.
Still tiring to have company after a long day. But here we are in Spoiler Town, and now I feel like we can properly dive in and talk about these films. Again, I don't think we're gonna stop at any kind of spoiler. So, if you haven't seen these movies, we definitely recommend going out and seeing them. They're both very, very entertaining, but be warned, very graphic.
Very graphic, and we're gonna talk about the graphics a whole lot.
So if you don't want to watch these movies, and you would rather just have them spoiled, welcome.
Yeah, we'll probably talk the whole plot of these movies, I think.
Yeah, almost. And let's start. Let's start with Hellraiser, I think.
Yeah.
You get the first hint that everything's gonna be gross at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
A guy gets a mysterious puzzle box.
Yeah.
From
Frank.
from a street vendor. Thank you, Frank, who is played by Sean Chapman. So Frank gets a puzzle box. He goes back to the family home where he squats in the attic. He draws pentagram and some Satanish stuff, I guess. I don't know if they're Satanist. Sorry if I offended Satanists out there.
Yeah. I mean, there might be 80s movie interpretation of Satanist symbols.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he solves the box. He summons, I don't remember what the world is. And the Cenobites come out and torture him. Like,
I believe Pinhead says hell to some, heaven to others.
Yes.
Or maybe he says they're demons to some, angels to
others.
Maybe that's what the line is.
Either way, it gets the point across, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the thing. They're not villains.
No.
They just torture you.
They are beings of the extreme experience. That's what the Cenobites are. We should get that right.
I think it's Cenobite.
Okay.
Cenobites. But yeah, the all you see at the beginning though are a bunch of chains and that end in hooks just coming out and just ripping through Frank and just tearing into his skin. And it's clearly fake. Yeah, it's clearly fake skin. Like they do like up close shots of like hooks just going in, and you see blood pouring out, and it's gross.
The blood is very quick running.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it runs very fast.
The special effects were done by Bob Keane, who also did Candyman later on, which is another Clive Barker adaptation. I don't think Clive Barker did Candyman. But he wrote the short story it's based off of.
Back to like the first big effect though is so I guess what I should set up the scene a little bit first that I want to talk about.
Let's go to rewind to get back to after Frank, they cut to the family coming down.
Right.
And that's where you were going with it is, the family's moving in.
Mm-hmm.
The husband and some movers are carrying a couch up the stairs.
Yeah,
while
I believe it's
the
a
wife.
bed, but yeah.
Oh yeah, the bed. The wife, who's played by Claire Higgins, Julia Cotton. Julia's, for whatever reason, attracted to the attic. She's having like some weird flashbacks about, she's just like, she's remembering having sex with Frank, and she's just wandering up in the attic, just like, yay.
And it's right before she gets married to Larry that she has this affair.
Yeah.
And probably hasn't seen Frank since.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely seems like she thought something could come from it, but then like just lost romance. But while she's wandering around in the attic, good old husband, what's his name, Larry, played by Andrew Robinson, he backs up into a nail, and you see the nail just tear through the skin of his hand.
It's so
good,
but it's so
good,
bad.
but that's not the big scene you're gonna talk about.
No, wasn't.
The big scene comes from what happens from the hand cut.
Yeah,
because he carries that up to the attic, and some blood drips on the floor.
Right,
and summons Brother Frank.
It summons Brother Frank, but before that, we learn that Larry just absolutely hates blood. He is definitely the antithesis, or God damn it, my vocabulary.
Antithesis.
Yeah. He is the opposite of his brother Frank. He hates blood. Probably the most Manila lover that a woman can find, and he's like, oh, I can't look at it, Julia. You gotta do it. You gotta look at it. Help me, Julia. And
he is definitely needing care, and Frank is definitely
hurt me, baby. Anyhow, he spills blood on the attic floor, and apparently that's the room. It's kind of like they don't really set up.
It's poorly set up.
Room where Frank gets torn apart. I don't feel like they set that up very well, but anyhow, Frank, just like opposite of melting, comes out of the floor piece by piece.
Once everybody leaves. Once everyone leaves, it's the attic by itself. But he comes out piece by piece, and
it is so gross. It is the worst. It is goopy, and
you watch the brains, like the brain stem go into the brain, and like that goes into the skull, and like everything, just the bones start coming together, and there's a lot of squelching and icky goo dripping everywhere.
And it doesn't, I don't know if the body or whatever it is also played by Sean Chapman. But
I don't know. It's done by Bob Keane at the very least. The special effects all by that man.
Yes, it does not look like him, but a person that looks like a melted corpse isn't gonna look like the person they were before. That is the first form of Frank after his return. Is like he's not even able to walk. He's barely able to crawl across the floor.
He's just kind of bones.
Just bones and a little bit of sinews,
and that's the famous shot is when he first forms, his skeleton comes like halfway out of the flooring, and like there's sunlight behind it, and he's just like just screaming, the Willem Dafoe from Platoon scream. Your arms are just thrown out wide, and you're screaming at the sky. I did write down that Oliver Smith plays Skinless Frank.
Oh, he does. Okay, all right, because he does not seem like it's the same actor. Well, then Smith did a great job of looking like a half dead person.
He did.
He did. He is freaky as fuck too. So then not Claire. The actor's name is Claire Higgins. But Julia comes back. Once again, she is attracted to the room for some reason.
Don't know why.
Yeah,
that's. I think I should say too that this is Clive Barker's directorial debut, and I do think that that's one problem he, at least in his first movie, that is a problem that's very noticeable, is he's not good at setting things up really well. In his books he's amazing. In the story he's great here too. Like in dialogue, things are set up well, but visually, I think he could do a little better at, as you said, the attic doesn't feel like it's the same room at the beginning. A lot of parts of this house feel like they just shift. Like, it kind of feels like there's no real grasp of what the house looks like.
Right. I feel like there were probably a couple of shots that are like, okay, we want to get it at this angle, but honestly, I don't think this room is right for that shot. And so they switched rooms.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels. But anyhow, Julie comes back and she's in the room with him and she freaks out, obviously. And is that during the dinner party scene? The weirdest dinner party?
Yeah, it might have been.
Where their teenage daughter gets drunk. I guess I don't know how old Christy is, but she
feels teenage.
What's that?
She feels like a rebellious teenager.
She feels like a teenager, but she's moved out of the house, so she's probably at least 18.
That's true. Yeah, she is given a lot of freedoms from her parents.
Yeah. But anyways, she's very clearly drunk in the scene. And anyhow, Julia leaves the party because, I don't know, like I feel like all these memories of Frank kind of put her off Larry for some reason. And
yeah, she's definitely not feeling the marriage and like moving into a home life that they've currently just like thrown themselves into. Right.
And there's like this weird line earlier where he says, "What's the big problem? We're out of the city, which you said you wanted, and you're back in your own church." And like the first time I watched this, I really expected her to become be your pastor or something. Like that line just is non sequitur to me. Comes back into the room because she's attracted to it. She sees this bony creature thing and freaks out.
Yeah, with goop still dripping from it.
Yeah,
like it's still slimy and wet and still forming.
Nasty. And he just like Golem dashes across the room and like slams the door and he's like, Julia, it's me.
Don't.
It's Frank.
That's almost spot on too. Like,
yeah.
But they have many close-ups of the face here, and the makeup is so good. Good. There's it's just a skull with some like tendons and muscle and like sinew still on it, but it's mostly just a skull, and it's just it's these kind of moments where I have like great like pride in special effects designers, like practical effects, because it's so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
There's Star Wars practical effects, and then there's these kind of practical effects, and it's so gross and so like terrifying, and it's just like the people who come up with this, like, what is wrong with them?
yeah Really. So this first version of Frank, I'm not so it's definitely great, I will say.
But it's not amazing.
Disgusting. But like there's several versions of Frank before he ends, and he whoever did the second, third, and fourth version of Frank studied Grey's Anatomy. Like they nailed it. Like he gets so what happens is he's like, I need you to repair me by feeding me more blood. And so Julia,
which is a very weird process.
Yes.
She starts to lure people through seduction.
Yeah.
Up to the attic. Like, I'm sorry, like, I'm a single guy, I go on dates. If a woman takes me back to her place and then starts like leading me up to an attic that in like a ramshackle building like this, I'm immediately turned off. I've heard a lot of horror stories.
Though. I think it might be a room, but like
it's a room, but it's at the very top of the house.
Yeah, it's the very top of the house. There's no furniture in it, and
you got to go through a
like,
lot of like rundown looking areas to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And like it's either burnt or has black mold everywhere.
Yeah.
I would not
like
have
I would walk
sex
in there
that room.
No, you'd walk in and be like, all right, where's the bed? And it's just like, no, we're going to do it this way. It's like, no. There's nails poking up out of the floor. This is a very unsanitary, and I'm not on this.
Not into this. I think there like the scene went exactly that way for one of the victims until the refusal.
But only one.
They're like, okay, yeah sure, kinky, whatever.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how easily it works on so many people too. You know, it's like she brings. And every time she was bringing them there, too, I'm like, where the fuck is your husband? Like, I don't remember if they mentioned what Larry does, but like, he's gone a lot.
He's gone a lot. But it's definitely like during the daytime. And who are these people at a bar ready to go get funky in the middle of the day? Like that's,
and they're all like wearing suits too, so it's like they're all business people.
It's like let's just take an extended lunch hour, and
let me just go freak on up in a creepy attic. But yeah, they go up there and then
she beams each of them with a hammer.
She does.
Yeah, she really does. And it works pretty successfully for 3 of them
each time.
Well, she almost gets caught the first time by Larry when he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
But she just claims that she's not feeling very well, and he's like very dutiful husband, like, oh, it's okay, honey, take your time. Let me know.
Doesn't she still have a little bit of blood on her face too when she's talking to him? Like,
she sure does. And I mean, like, she wears a lot of lipstick, so I feel like Larry could have easily subconsciously been like, okay, she got sick, it smeared her makeup, she didn't clean it up.
But through a process that involves sticking his fingers into the neck, Frank feeds off of these people. I never understand it. It never makes sense. Like, literally, he just like curls his fingers into their neck, and then he just starts making slurping sounds.
Yeah.
And
with
it's like, I don't know if he's drinking the blood. Yeah, that's like, I figured he was like drinking the blood, but at the same time, they never like show it.
I don't know.
Which I feel like is an opportunity missed for this kind of a movie.
Yes, yeah, it is a process he learned from the other side of the box store or whatever.
Yeah, but they did have to cut a lot to even market this movie.
Really?
They wanted to give it, this was during the big, the 80s time where, they were hard on ratings. Everything was getting big ratings. Too many swears, too much blood. Rated R, rated X. They wanted to give this an X rating, and so they had to remove a lot of gory stuff, which is kind of a surprise given how much is still left in. But a lot of the gory stuff they had to remove specifically involved like nudity and explicit like sexual torture stuff. I should say.
That is kind of crazy because there's definitely some fucked up shit in this. But I could definitely see her and Frank, going at it because she's straight up in love with him after he comes back, even in all his goopy glory.
Yeah, I mean, like, even with like blood, like, still whenever he touches stuff, blood smears everywhere. Even with that, she still makes out with him a lot.
Yeah, she even puts his goopy fingers in her mouth at one point.
Ugh. Yeah, from there, that's basically most of the movie. Even is like a good chunk of the second act is her bringing people back and killing them, like almost not montage style, but almost montage.
Almost montage style. And I feel like the movie tries to make Ashley Lawrence Christie the main character, but like she's not really the main character until the third act.
Yeah, when she becomes like the final girl almost.
Yeah,
It's that actor's film debut, even Ashley Lawrence.
Yeah, she's honestly, I would say, pretty talented.
Yeah, she's pretty good in this movie.
Yeah, I would say.
I think everybody's good, but nobody rises to the level of James Woods and
yeah, I would agree to that.
Videodrome.
I think both James Wood and Debbie Harry, I think they were both really good in that movie.
Oh yeah,
and Videodrome. And where I think that honestly Ashley Lawrence's performance, Frank's performance, I mean, because mean, you can't argue
Skinless
that
Frank
was great and terrifying. But
right.
I think Ashley Lawrence has probably the strongest performance in the film, and she's just not focused on in the beginning. Like, she's obviously there. Like, he does a pretty good job of setting her up, I'd say, but she doesn't feel like the protagonist until the end.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, she's kind of just like drunk, horny teenage lady,
right? Yeah.
You know, because she's like seeking out the mover, or I think it was the mover that she seeks out, and
I don't know. Is this
for whatever
guy
reason,
named
they let her
like
drink
Steve?
heavily.
Or, I don't know. What is her boyfriend's name?
Let's see if I even wrote him down.
Steve. Yeah, had it right. Yeah.
Nice, nailed it.
Anyways,
yeah, that guy.
He.
But it becomes it basically boils down to Frank gets strong enough to the point where Julia lures her husband Larry back up to the attic, and Frank kills Larry, and
doesn't just kill him.
He removes his skin and wears it.
Yeah.
Oh. And poor Claire comes home.
Oh yeah.
Or not Claire. Poor Kirsty, the daughter, comes home.
And she thinks that her dad's body is Frank.
Yeah, because Frank is doing a pretty darn terrific job as acting like Larry.
Yeah. Until he says, what gives it away is, come to daddy. Come to daddy.
Ugh.
Oh yeah, it's fucked.
Gross.
And like just scenes before, the monster Frank said, "Come to daddy," to Christy, and so that's what gives it away. So Frank, was not being coy enough.
Yeah, and then it becomes a matter of, one, she's got to survive. Kirsty does.
Right.
But two, she solved the puzzle box. We forgot to mention that before she came home, she found and solved the puzzle box again and summoned the Cenobites. And when you solve the puzzle box, the Cenobites take you to their realm, and they sadistically torture you, and you enjoy it.
Yeah, the experiences.
Yeah, they open your mind. And I think we should mention that. Yeah, probably. We should mention that the Cenobites are they all have their own physical torture that's been done to them.
Right.
Pinhead has nails all throughout his head.
Right.
Whatever that acupuncture like manner.
Yes, but they're not acupuncture needles. They are much thicker.
No. Yeah, they're nails. Then there's one that's chattering, that's had something done to his mouth. Like, I can't remember exactly what's been done to him.
It's like pulled open with wires.
Yeah. Ugh. And then one that's like been bloated.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's the most alien of them all, really.
Yeah,
the others
really
are very
is. The
human-like.
guy with the chattering mouth too is a little alien looking. I think that I think they're supposed to look like they were burnt, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, but also
they do have that Darth Vader
be originally from another place than Pinhead and the lady who has her throat open.
Yeah, another dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all are, all of those Cenobites are well acted, very intimidating.
Yeah.
I wouldn't they're definitely frightening. But I would say Frank's body is honestly just like the transformation of that is more frightening.
Oh yes, that
Um,
yeah, definitely is the biggest scare of the movie is him coming out of the floor and the different stages of his return. It's definitely scary.
And it's gross what the Cenobites do, and it's terrifying what they do. But as you said, him coming out of the floor is just ugh, makes me each time when you watch it, you're glued to it. But it's gross.
Yeah.
But she solves the puzzle box and realizes that she can basically sell Frank instead of her. If she gives them Frank, she should be able to go free.
Right.
So that's why she goes back to the house. That's why she tries to make it so that she can, find Frank and give Frank back to the Cenobites so that she doesn't have to go to this realm and experience the ultimate experience.
Yeah,
whatever they called it again.
I mean, most people would not want this ultimate experience. Frank obviously did. He sought it out on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And others
and then
obviously
ran from
do. Because the Cenobites keep on getting people. But she did it on accident because she was trying to understand what was going on. And so, anyways, she comes back to the house. Frank admits that he escaped. And that's when the Cenobites come back. And they're like...
with the same chains flying out of nowhere just to hook themselves into his skin, which is now Larry's skin.
Yeah. And they rip Frank apart. And Christy has to watch. And then they're like, okay, Christy, let's go. And she's like, fuck that.
Right. And then she's got to solve the puzzle box and get the fuck out. And I feel like that's, that is the movie in a nutshell. And I love it. It's gross. It's fun. Even though it's gross, you're still hooked. You're still involved. But the problems with it that I don't have with Videodrome is, like, as you said, the main character doesn't really emerge until the third act. I mean, she's part of it, but, like, she doesn't emerge as the main character until then.
Yeah, the focus is definitely on Julia and Frank up until that point.
And I think that's where Videodrome is better. And unless you had more to say about Hellraiser, maybe we go into Videodrome.
I would agree with what you said. Like, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with the focus shift. Mm-hmm. It's just I feel like they could have done a little bit more to set up Christy, and maybe it does happen in some of those scenes. Maybe there's a couple more dream scenes that she has that are cut out. Because
maybe they did remove a lot of her stuff. That's possible.
It's very possible. And you know what, like, there is an old Hollywood trope of highly sexualizing newcomer actresses, especially in the era. So it could be very possible. And maybe that's what's missing from the film for me. But yeah, let's move on to Videodrome. That all equally as gross, but in totally different ways.
In a totally different way, and a better way, I think, because the main character is seeking, this sadomasochistic stuff is happening to the main character, to somebody that we're built to relate to. We're following specifically, whereas with Hellraiser, it's happening to other people. It's not the main character. It's Frank. It's the poor bastards that Julia's bringing back and conking on the head with a hammer. Here it's Max Wren. Here it's James Woods, who is a master. Like, I fucking love him in this movie.
He's really good in this particular role, I would say. I haven't seen too many James Wood movies, but there's this, and then Hades and Hercules.
He's got so many. But this is one of my favorites of his, and it's really because despite the crazy, very non-relatable world that he lives in, you get the most realistic performance you can imagine from, it's like everything that happens to him, his expressions to what happens, I feel like I would make too. Most often, it's just like he's so mind blown, so disgustingly captured by things that he sees. It's just his emotions for this movie is remarkable, and it's I feel like he wanted to make a movie with Cronenberg. I feel he had seen Scanners, he liked Scanners a lot, and he sought out Cronenberg to make a movie, and it really shows because he it seems like he gives everything to this role, even though he had issues with it. So to give this movie the same treatment, it starts off. He's on like a talk show kind of like, I mean, it's not the beginning, the very beginning, but he goes on he goes on a talk show, and that's where he meets his love interest, Nikki Brand,
who she
played by Debbie Harry.
Yeah, she is a radio talk show host who her job she kind of does the Fraser Kane job.
Yeah, she does.
Where she's
just not as fun at it.
Psychiatrist on air, and but like her persona is completely different from who she is in real life.
Yeah, she's definitely putting on the front when she's hosting.
Yeah, she puts on like this idea, even in the interview with her and Max. She says that she feels that the channel that Max represents puts forth just too much stimulation for people, and it's stimulation for stimulation's sake, and that's no good. And
she calls out a question his sexism, basically.
Right.
It's like you're just treating women as objects. And I love that she brings that question forth, where she's just like, she talks about how he treats women or how he views women through his media, and like 2 minutes later he asks her out to go to dinner. I just like, I just love that scene.
Which, like, when I first watched this movie, I was like, okay, so I guess I'm not gonna like Max very much.
Right. You get the very bad opinion of him from that interview.
Yeah. But then, of course, she ends up going out with him because she's attracted to bad boys and to all sorts of things sexually.
Yeah, she's attracted to specifically what the media is that he puts forth.
Right.
This almost violent and aggressive style of entertainment.
And Max's philosophy, which is also put on display in this TV interview, is that he is giving his viewers an outlet so that they don't go out and become violent or sexually deprived, whatever that means anymore.
Yeah. Non-consensually.
Non-consensuals. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, as he says, the women and the women and the men that are presented through his media want it.
Yeah, it is consensual what they're doing, and they're paid actors in his in the media that he broadcasts. He doesn't produce the media.
He broadcasts. He just finds it, and then he comes across through a what was the guy, a scrambler? It's kind of like a hacker kind of character.
Harlan, played by Peter Drovsky.
Yes, fun character.
I'm not going to be able to say how his name is pronounced, so I apologize for that guy. Yeah, I think he's interesting, but I feel like they did the thing where they wrote a Hispanic character and then cast a white guy. I mean, he might be Hispanic. So maybe not. I could be wrong. But
if they wanted a Hispanic character, I agree with you. They should have cast somebody
but
Hispanic.
His catchphrase is Patron, and that's what he calls Max, but he always says it with the accent. It's the only thing he says with an accent, so it kind of throws me off personally. But it could just be
I didn't get what he was doing with it.
Yeah, exactly. But not to throw Peter under the bus. But
yeah, I didn't know if it was an actor trait or, as you said, if they had written that character to be that way and just cast the wrong.
Right.
I shouldn't say the wrong guy because, as again, he is a fun character. That catchphrase aside, but they also do something with him like later on in the end where they kind of make him like a double agent spy kind of thing.
Yeah.
That they've done so well at making all of the reality shaky and not believable.
Right.
That I really don't understand his character because of the ending. I'm just like, was he? Wasn't he?
Well, like the whole movie, like you end the movie and you just wonder, because it is a movie about hallucination. You just wonder if any of it was actually happening. Like, I mean, you kind of like, I feel like as the viewer, while you're watching it, you have to buy into it.
There's a specific moment too in the movie where it just, reality just shifts and you're just like, okay, from this point forward, I literally don't know what's real and what's not.
Exactly. And neither does Max. And that is kind of the beauty of this movie, is that the audience is just as confused as the main character is.
Yeah, you devolve with him.
Yes.
Or descend. I mean, you descend into madness with this character, basically.
Right.
Because of what you're seeing, too.
Yeah.
It's like what you're seeing is so not what you've normally seen in movies that, you're kind of just, your brain's kind of shook just by the visuals alone.
Yeah.
That as things start to go south, you kind of just follow the characters into that madness.
After I watched this movie, there was a couple of days where I was just like, man, I don't know what the fuck is real anymore. It was very, I think I stopped watching TV for a little while too. I was like, I gotta step back.
Cronenberg scrambled your mind and you're just like, I gotta reorient. Yeah, I mean, it definitely does that to you. And it's beautiful how it does it because, to cut back to the plot, Max, through that hacker character Harlan, finds the network of Videodrome,
right,
where people are tortured, almost to the point of death, on in this like very amateur styled camera, but it's enrapturing what they do to these people. I guess they never really show specifically. You say
almost to death, but they mention a couple times that the contestants get murdered at the end.
There is a market for this kind of entertainment.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it's crazy to think about.
And I mean, there is snuff media out there. I mean, there's really stuff that you can find on the internet. I'm not, by no means is this my endorsement to go and do that.
No,
definitely don't.
Especially when most of that in reality is not consensual.
No, it is not.
In the film and in the film and it's presented as being consensual for the sake of media specifically.
Yeah. At least that's what Max thinks at the beginning.
Yes.
He thinks that it's actors.
Yes.
But later on, he is told by another pretty interesting character, the woman that brings him materials. I can't remember what her name is. It might be Birdie. I can't remember.
Oh, Bianca Oblivion?
No, not Bianca Oblivion. The older woman who brings him softcore porn and stuff like that.
Oh,
and he
right.
has
The media.
her go and investigate Videodrome for him.
Mm-hmm.
She's another fairly interesting character. She's got like a German accent, or at least some kind of European accent. And
does softcore period piece porn.
yeah. And he's like, people don't want this anymore. And he said, I'm sorry. because he
dried up
definitely
here.
likes her. Like they have a really interesting relationship. I like them.
Well, I mean, that's one thing with Max Wren is he's a very charismatic person.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
he's in that business for a reason, and that's why he's great with people. You know, he knows how to find things, he knows how to sell things, and he knows how to find the right audience for things. But that's what makes him kind of so attracted to Videodrome is he kind of wants to understand it. He kind of wants to. Yeah, I mean, he starts to think maybe he likes it even when he starts dating Nikki Brand.
Yeah, because
she's into it. Yeah, she wants him to choke her. She wants him to bite her.
Burn her with cigarettes.
And he starts to burn her with cigarettes, and he starts to like it. But then she goes off to find Videodrome.
And he's like, does he send do that? He's like, don't.
Yeah, does he send the lady before then, or does he send her after? Nikki leaves. That is.
He sends her out before that, but he has the conversation where she's like, Videodrome is real after that conversation, which I feel like the main script might have had those two scenes swapped, and that's why he's so concerned about Nikki being like, I want to go do this. But then they're like, when they were editing, they're like, you know what, I like it better here. Because his concern, because when he's at the top of the scene at the restaurant with the agent character, he does not seem that concerned about Videodrome until she starts being like, I don't think you want to have anything to do with this. And he's like, please tell me. If I go and find out that it's too freaky, I won't deal with it. You know I stay away from the scary stuff. That's what he says.
Yeah.
But obviously he wants to know. He wants to know.
Yeah, he wants to know. Yeah, he wants to figure it out. But Nikki goes out and she basically disappears.
Right.
And he sees her on. I think he sees her on an episode of Videodrome, where he goes crazy, kind of obsesses over making sure he sees the output from Videodrome
I think
daily.
He's trying to catch if she's on there because she's been gone for a while. But I think the first time he sees her is when he confronts Bianco Oblivion. And if we're going to talk about Bianco Oblivion, we got to talk about Brian Oblivion, who is her father and was also a guest on that interview with him and Nikki. But he only appears on television through television.
He is a man on a television set on television.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, since we're just doing spoilers already, is because he's been dead for years.
He's been dead for over 20 years, and he did a bazillion tapes before he died. And so
pre-recorded everything.
He is. So what's really interesting is that he's answering the questions that the interviewer is giving and responding to conversation that Max and Nikki are having in this interview, but from the past.
Yeah, through vague responses and pre-recording.
Right, but he also even turns his head to the right person. It's pretty cool, and obviously effects wise, it's pretty easy to explain. They he had a script and was told where to look, but when you find that out, you're like, wait, what? So he just knows everything, and it's because he too was exposed to Videodrome.
Yes,
and Videodrome is not the show that Max thinks it is. It is a frequency put in under the show.
Yes, that causes a bad tumor in your brain.
A bad tumor in your brain.
That makes you hallucinate. And
I guess
lose touch with reality. I guess see the future. Well, I mean, I feel like he basically just pre-recorded a lot of outcomes, and I feel like his daughter was just really good at putting forth the right tapes for stuff. Yeah,
she was his ambassador after death.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if he could see the future and like knew what was going to happen in the interview or anything. I just feel like he put forth a lot of really good, bland, like vague responses.
Well,
that could go well.
I mean, he knew Max. Like he knew he knew Max was going to come to him.
Yeah.
And
that
was able to respond to that and be like, I really appreciate you coming to me, Max. In a video that Bianco gives him. And that point, and that brings us back to why I brought it up.
But I mean, at that point, though, also is when he's starting to lose touch with reality. So it's very possible that wasn't an actual videotape, I think, because that could have just been, part of the hallucinations Max was starting to have.
That's true. See, that's the thing, though, is that at a certain point, you got to wonder if the whole thing was a delusion. If the whole movie was a delusion.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, Max starts to develop a slit in the middle of his chest.
Right. At first, he thinks it's a rash.
Yeah. At first, he thinks it's a rash. Then it becomes a very vagina-like slit in his chest.
Yeah.
where a Betamax could be inserted. It wasn't a videotape; it was a Betamax. I don't know why.
I don't know.
But yeah, he starts to mutate. His I can't remember when the gun gets.
That is,
or when his hand mutates into a gun.
That is after
all the hallucinations and everything.
No, his name's not Brian Cox. It's the other. Oh, Barry Convex. His front is that he is a sunglass salesman. Not a sunglass, eyeglass salesman. But he, in actuality, and I'm putting up air quotes here, because who fucking knows with this movie what's real and what's not. He is working with the government to develop Videodrome.
Yeah, and along with those people are people that Max Wren felt comfortable with, like Harlan. Double Agent Harlan.
Right. And I guess what I wanted to bring up with that video that Oblivion was talking to Max through, Nikki is the one, at least in his hallucination, is the one who kills Brian Oblivion.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is weird to him. That's the first time he sees her. After she disappears.
Which is why I think specifically it's a hallucination.
Yeah, and it very well could be. It's just so fucking hard to tell.
Yeah, because he gets, he kind of gets cornered by the people developing Videodrome. He ends up putting on a massive helmet that puts him in that world.
Right. Who was in the world of Cronenberg. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of practical effects, like, he puts on a helmet with a lot of wiring in it that James Wood was too, afraid of being electrocuted to wear. I guess James Wood got really tired of acting with that giant prosthetic slit in it on his chest. He would stumble around yelling, "I'm no longer an actor. I'm just the bearer of the slit." So it's just like, it's like a lot of the practical effects just started to weigh on him after a while, but like he still gave it his all. But he puts on that helmet, and once he puts that helmet on and goes into like the Videodrome world,
right,
it's up in the air what's real and what's not in this movie.
Knows?
Like
who fucking knows? And that guy who puts the helmet on, Barry Convex, he's like, "You'll forgive me if I don't stick around. I can't cope with the freaky stuff."
yeah, he just leaves. And then he James Woods, Max Wren starts, he gets a gun that, like, his hand mutates with a gun on it so that he can't drop the gun ever.
Except the company starts except for there are definitely some scenes where he doesn't have the gun in his hand. But I always took that as like the perspective shifts to the reality that he's just a gun-toting maniac now, and that's what the real people see, but he sees it it's a part of him now. This gun.
I think that's exactly what as how I see it too is his reality is shifting because he's walking through this building, going to his media broadcasting partners, and as he's walking through the building, his hand doesn't seem to be mutated. There doesn't seem to be a gun in it. But then occasionally he'll shift back and there it is. It's mutated. There's a gun. He'll pull it out of his jacket and he'll have the gun on there.
Yeah.
But he goes back and he shoots because of the government like whispering in his ear. I think it was convex whispering in his mind, not in his ear.
By the VHS in his slit.
Yes. The Betamax.
Yeah. And there's even a line where Bianca tries to reprogram him and she's like, it's hard to get the tape out after it's been inside. And she's like, but I want you to pull it out. And then she gives him another tape. And and so it's a very intriguing movie. I mean,
it is, and
like you said, we could talk about it all night if we wanted to.
Yeah, it's like that's basically the ending though. Is he kills his business partners, and then I can't remember how, but he like just ends up in a room with a TV. And
right. He's on a condemned ship. And so there's no real TV on the ship. It's definitely his hallucination. But he's on a condemned ship, in a condemned part of the harbor, and he ends up killing himself because the TV tells him to, and that's the ending of the movie.
I thought like doesn't he like blows the TV up and then he blows up with like dies with the TV or something? I think
the TV
or does the TV.
Up. No.
But it blows up with his death.
The TV shows him what to do. So the ending scene happens twice. And maybe the ship blows up. I don't know. I can't recall.
I don't think so.
But yeah, the TV shows him shooting himself, and I think you're right. I think the TV does blow up, but then he stands up
when he shoots himself,
reacts the scene and kills himself.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, I think that's how it is. And they did have another not an end credits scene, but like a scene after that. Originally.
Originally.
It ended with Max Brand committing suicide, and then him and Nikki meet again in Videodrome.
Huh.
So they have like a reconnecting moment, but Cronenberg cut that because he's an atheist and thought that would present the idea of an afterlife.
Right.
And he didn't want that to become the focus of the story.
Right.
So he removed it.
But like him killing himself, that was the act of him completing his transformation and becoming completely the new flesh.
Yes.
And I am kind of curious as to where the hallucination continues after that. But like you said, with that ending, you can just read it as that Max was schizophrenic and just went crazy. And I think it is a very appropriate ending for the movie, but it definitely left me wanting more at the same time. Before we wrap up here, which I think we're getting to, I really want to talk about the sexualized scenes with the television set. Those are some of the weirdest effects in the movie because like he strokes the TV and like it bloats up and gets a little veiny.
Yeah, it's like it's like it's breathing also.
Yeah, like it's breathing, but the veins on it are kind of like, penis veins.
Veins of the cock.
Yeah, but Nikki is always on the screen, having making sexual noises, and then there's also this one scene which the first time I watched it I did not understand the effect at all. This time I really paid attention, where her lips are on the screen and it kind of bubbles up, and then he puts his face in the screen and his face gets enveloped in it. And like, I'm pretty sure what they did is they had a soft material that they blew up with air to make it pop out like that. And so that's why he's able to put his face into it so easy. And also with a cathode tube project an image onto it.
Yeah.
Very good effect. First time it happened, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think we should point out here the effects were done by Rick Baker, who is very famous for A Werewolf in London.
Okay.
And for You and I, he also did the makeup effects for Bela Lugosi on the Ed Wood movie.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yes, that's a fun fact I found out. But A Werewolf in London is his big, people know him for that.
Scene.
But yeah, he did the makeup or the effects here, and it's so good. It's so practical, and there's, as you said, there's so many times where you literally just kind of want to figure out how they did that.
Right.
With the breathing videotape, with the sexualized TV, that whole scene.
That guy's holding the tape, and it's alive.
Yeah, and it looks like a Betamax VHS.
Right.
But I mean, like, you can tell it's not, but at the same time, it's just like there's something, it's such a good effect.
Well, because the effect evolves too, because the first time they try it it's just Max holding a regular looking tape, and it breathes. That time at first it definitely looks like a real tape, and then it breathes.
Yeah.
But later it's all gross and goopy.
Yeah. Even with the slit, so many times where you see that kind of stuff, it's very clear where the actor's body is and what's the prosthetic.
Right.
It's like many times if they're laying down, you can believe that they built a fake floor and the actor's just standing up, and that the body that you're seeing is just all practical and fake. With Alien, where, the chest bursts, you can tell that that's not John Hurt's actual body. It's, a fake body that the alien bursts out. But it's done in such a way that you're just like, oh, it looks really good. You wouldn't notice it's a fake body unless you're looking for it. Same with here with the slit. Like, there's so many times where, like, he puts his hand in there. It looks like he's literally digging into his own body.
He loses the gun in it.
He loses the gun in it, yeah, and it comes back later because he reaches back into the slit and finds it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the slit looks like it's part of James Wood's body, like he's carrying it around for most of the movie, and it's so good. But yeah, the special effects are amazing, and I think we should also point out that the music is great. The music comes from Howard Shore, who did Lord of the Rings. The music for Lord of the Rings, as well as most David Cronenberg movies. But like, I think it's amusing that the guy who gave us Lord of the Rings also scored this, because it's a very different score here. So he had an orchestra play it, and then he took that orchestra music, programmed it into a synthesizer, and then from there had the synthesizer version played in tandem with a string section. And that's what gave this music. It's very like, it's electro kind of, but at the same time it has that violin kind of feel that creeps under your skin,
right?
Especially during a lot of those sexualized torture scenes.
He's whipping the TV, man, and the TV likes it.
It's such a good scene. It's so off-putting, and like that's where a lot of the horror for this movie comes from, is that it knocks you off of your level of comfortability.
Right.
And then just attacks you.
So in comparing it to Hellraiser, we talked a little bit how there's a couple of times where you don't feel like the scene was set up right. But this has like the opposite effect, where scenes bleed into other settings. Like, especially when him and Nikki are on the floor having sex, listening to Videodrome in the background. And then all of a sudden they're in that clay room where Videodrome is filmed.
It's so good. Yeah, it's that blending of reality, and it's like whereas Hellraiser just kind of feels like a bit amateurish at times, this just feels masterful, because it all comes back to, even if you don't like a certain part of it, or even if you're confused by a certain part of it, it could just be because it's all fake. Yeah, it's all hallucination.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like there is a straight line to this whole movie.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a director's image and a path that, that is the answer for it all. but he doesn't force you to follow that. You know, you can read into everything your own way, and I love this movie for it.
Right. But either way, Max Wren is a very troubled individual.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He is not a man you should aspire to be, I would say.
No. I wouldn't mind being the president of a TV channel. You know,
it'd be interesting.
They typically have pretty good income. And I definitely love TV. Not like he does.
Yeah, it's like I have a lot of television ideas that I would love to see come to life.
Right.
And I feel like as the president of a company, I could probably make that happen.
That's true.
But whereas where I'm at now, it's like some of my TV show ideas involve like, I have a Star Wars story and I have a DC Comics story that I'm going to have to impress a lot of people before I can get their attention.
Yeah, got to get rights. Well, I think we nearly talked these, off a bridge.
I think we talked them to death.
Or what's that?
I said I think we talked them to death. Both of these movies.
Both of them, yeah.
People stopped listening half an hour ago, probably.
Oh, I don't know about that. But I suppose if you wanted to, we could drop the wall, and then decide who won the Smackdown.
Yeah. So I think it's very clear for me, of our first ever genre Smackdown body horror edition, I'm giving it to the pioneer of body horror, David Cronenberg, and Videodrome. I love Clive Barker's I almost said Books of Blood. That's the short story collection. I love Clive Barker's Hellraiser. I give it 3 stars. I give Videodrome 3.5 stars. It's focus on one character, the use of the effects to not only be like sexual but also to be terrifying,
right?
While playing at your sexual fantasies like this. I say yours specifically, playing at
they're all mine.
A very niche. Yeah, they all are yours. It's a very niche sexual fantasy, but it at the same time you can kind of understand where they're going with it all. If you're ever interested in sadomasochism, if you want to watch a movie specifically devoted to the horrors that can come from it, I guess I think these two movies are very good at that.
Both of them, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but Videodrome wins the Smackdown in my opinion.
Well, I can't disagree with you. I think it does win. If we're okay, so maybe I'm kind of split actually, because I would say if you're just talking on how good the movie is, then Videodrome wins for me quite a bit. I could keep on returning to this movie wondering what the hell's going on, but Hellraiser, I definitely am scared by the imagery more. Mm-hmm. While the imagery does scare me in Videodrome, it's very latent. It's more that it makes me think. Where in Hellraiser, it's just like, oh my God, what is happening right now? And yeah, I guess I still say that when I'm watching Videodrome, but it's more of like, why is this happening? I question.
Yeah, you're more enraptured.
More. Yeah. And so I guess all in all, I want to give it to Videodrome, but I definitely think Hellraiser scared me more in the classical scary way. But
and there's also with Hellraiser, there's also more to explore. Again, there's 10 movies in the franchise,
right? And
that movie definitely leaves you kind of feeling like, I want to know more about this universe.
I definitely want to know.
You're very intrigued by Hellraiser.
Yeah. And
not in the way that, not in the story's way of intrigue with, sexual torture.
Right.
You're intrigued from the dimension that is presented. It's like, I want to know more about Pinhead. I want to know more about the Cenobites. there's a lot of intrigue, whereas there's a lot of enrapturing.
Right.
Videodrome
is there's, you definitely are not going to be able to. There's no sequel to Videodrome. There's no reason to have a sequel to Videodrome.
Yeah, it's clean. It's done.
Yeah.
Explore it.
Yeah, and so I guess all in all, I know I said I'm split on it, but I love Videodrome. I really do. And so I want to give it the belt. It got the belt for body horror Smackdown.
For body horror.
Yeah.
And we'll come at you with another genre Smackdown someday. Maybe you could also give us ideas of what genre you would like us to experience.
That'd be great.
Couch potatoes.
Love some audience participation.
Oh yeah.
We have gotten one or two suggestions, and we do want to put those in as canon episodes, but we're gonna wait till we feel that is appropriate to use those suggestions.
Yeah. When the weather's right, when the time is right.
That's right. So yeah, just know that we're listening.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. We appreciate the feedback. Tell us how we can improve. Tell us how we could, better entertain you. But we do recommend both of these movies. This is coming from two people who are not huge fans of torture porn.
No.
Both of these movies give you what torture porn gives you without feeling like torture porn.
Yeah.
There feels like a purpose here. There's a story. It's not just to be like, ooh, isn't that gross? People are getting cut up.
Yeah.
Gore.
Yeah. It's definitely gory, but it's not gory just for the sake of gore. I will say, which, I mean, some people may argue with this, I'm sure, especially people who don't like horror in general, that they'll disagree with that. But I think our opinion is pretty valid, that there's good reasons behind the horrific things you'll see in these movies.
And I like it all. I love it all. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. I've been the Faceless Leon.
And I'm the Green Traveler.
Safe travels, everybody.
Ooh.
Ooh. Green and Faceless on the Couch is a proud production of FictionWorks 19. We plan to publish new episodes of this podcast every Thursday evening. If you'd like to give us a comment, please visit us at facebook.com/greenandfaceless. There you'll find many links to our show and to our website. Thanks for listening.